Right now, though, let's talk to Marie van der Zyl, past president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, because yesterday it had to happen, didn't it? Gary Lineker, who's been quiet for a while, to be fair, since he's been told his contract's not being renewed at the BBC. He hasn't been sticking his nose into anything political. But yesterday, the bozo decided to enter the debate about that Gaza documentary, so-called documentary, the BBC put out a week ago Monday. It was called Surviving a Warzone, right? How to Survive a Warzone. It turns out it wasn't a documentary at all. It was a piece of blatant Hamas propaganda. And since the documentary has been pulled, we've discovered that the cameraman that was used for the movie turns out to have been a supporter of what Hamas did on October the 7th. There's also another guy that appears in the film who is constantly appearing in other Hamas propaganda. We also found out yesterday that not only did the BBC pay £400,000 to the makers of the show, I think a production company called Hoyo, but also they changed the substance of what people were saying to disguise the fact that they hated Israel and wanted to see it destroyed in jihad. So quite frankly, the last thing you would have expected really was Gary Lineker complaining that it had been taken off the website. But that's exactly what he did. Him and 499 other so-called celebrities, including Miriam Margolis, including Anita Rani, including Ken Loach. Well, he would, wouldn't he? Have all written to the BBC to complain that it's a disgusting piece of censorship and they should have left it available for all to see. I'm pretty sure Marie van der Zyl is going to agree with me that was a very, very unfortunate interjection from him. Marie, a very good morning to you.
Morning. It's more than an unfortunate interjection, isn't it? It is, as you say, blatant Hamas propaganda. Yeah. £400,000 they've spent, and they've given the money to a member of Hamas, the family of a member of Hamas. And let's remember, the UK has prescribed Hamas as a terrorist organisation. Yeah. The BBC, from the start of October 7, of course, refuses to call them terrorists. They only call them militant.
Well, this is the thing that really amazed me about the letter that they've all signed, is that in that letter, they make out that, you know, this boy Abdullah's father is not a terrorist. He just happens to be the agriculture minister for Hamas, as if to say that, you know, Hamas have got a sort of a non-military terrorist, non-terrorist wing. You know, Hamas is a terrorist organisation. The end. Everybody in it is involved in terrorism.
Absolutely. Look, I don't want any children to die. I don't want anyone to die. But Hamas is a terrorist organisation, and that is the beginning and the end of it. This whole documentary is riddled with problems. The BBC is meant to have impartiality enshrined in its charter. We're meant to trust the BBC. We pay our licence fee, and they have not done any due diligence here. And this programme is not what it says it is. There's no way it should be put back on air. And Gary Lineker and all those people should know absolutely better. This is just not acceptable to pay a terrorist organisation.
No. It's also not acceptable to call something a documentary and then to tinker with what people actually said, you know, changing the subtitles so that it doesn't sound quite so extreme. So, for example, when some woman talks about a jihad against the Jews, they disguise that phrase and make it into something else, a fight against the Israeli forces.
Worse than that, the word Yehud in Arabic means Jews, and they've changed translation to Israel.
Right.
That's just absolutely outrageous. The Israel bias that has been seen from the BBC knows no end. It goes on and on and on. And I want to know, what processes did the BBC actually go through when they spent this money, they signed off this document, and how much money from the UK taxpayer has gone to a terrorist organisation?
Well, that question has been asked to the BBC and they haven't answered it yet. So we look forward to hearing from them as to how it could have happened. Also, I'd like to know what the process was of the commissioning of this article of propaganda. I'd like to know who okayed the fact that they could change the subtitles and change what was actually said. I'd like to know, you know, how this was even possible to have been made for the BBC and broadcast, you know, in a prime time slot on mainstream television.
About the cameraman, how much money was paid to him as well.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, we are meant to trust the BBC, but clearly we cannot trust them.
No. Turns out they're paying the Taliban as well.
Yes, I read that story this morning. I mean, there does need to be an urgent review of the BBC and its commissioning of programmes. We have to trust the BBC. And when are they going to call these people terrorists?
Right. And also, one thing I wanted to mention to you as well, Marie, was last night in lots of parts of the world, in America, in New York, in Brandenburg Gate, in Berlin, at the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and even in Budapest in Hungary, there were monuments lit up in honour of the Bibas family, you know, that terrible story of the two little children and their mother butchered by Hamas in cold blood. The husband had to bury them all yesterday in one coffin in Israel. We didn't do anything in London, it seems, as far as I can tell. But what we did have was Sadiq Khan lighting up the Ramadan lights.
I absolutely have to agree with you. The hostages, I can barely get the words out. It's so traumatic. It's so awful. Nobody could surely be unmoved by the butchering of babies. We should have been here. Absolutely. There's no question. This is the worst trauma that could have happened to people since the Holocaust, and that funeral yesterday has touched the hearts of everyone. There's a baby. What terrorist organisation even wants to murder a baby? And I heard put in a locked coffin.
Right, I know. It's just unbelievable, incredible. But apparently it doesn't move Sadiq Khan, so he couldn't be bothered, which is a bit of a sad indictment, I'm afraid, of the mayor of what is a great city of Europe. But listen, good to talk to you, Marie. Thanks very much indeed. Marie van der Zil, past president of the Board of Deputies.